please welcome Fast Eddy, Mikolič, Gaffer, cool guy extraordinaire, Gaffer, Crimes of the Future, and many, many other films and TV shows. Mo Ray, I'm going to go by my order that's on here. Mo Ray, line producer, production manager, Directors Guild of Canada, Ontario District. Alix, Peña, location manager, Directors Guild of Canada. Marianne Waterhouse, producer, Quadrant Motion Pictures. And moderator over here, Marwa, Siam-Abdou, our national outreach manager at Directors Guild of Canada. So I'd love to welcome these fabulous folks. Before we jump into the chat, we're going to watch a little video.
I think that the best ideas come from the arts. The most creative people have landed in the film industry because it's such a all-encompassing art form, and I would love to see that application put into practice.
Forwarding the sustainable narrative just through the everyday things that the characters are doing on screen, with the way that they're drinking water, the way that they're driving their cars.
We want to be a clean industry. None of us like working around diesel generators.
Hi, everyone. We're going to get started with Mo. So you're going to be presenting a tool that was recently launched that is very helpful and very practical and potentially life-changing for many people who work on sets. So I'll let you take over.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to step aside here so I can see the PDF that's going to, I think, come up. Oh, there's a clicker here for me. Perfect. This is exactly what I needed. I guess the green button, right? Okay. So welcome, everybody. My name is Mo. I'm on the board of the DGC, Director Guilds of Canada, Ontario District, and I'm also a production manager, and I'm very passionate about sustainability. So thank you, everybody here, for coming here. First, I just want to do a little plug-in for dgcgreen.ca. It's a great tool that there's a lot of tools that are going to be presented on it. There are tips and hints as well, specific for each department as well to use sustainability on. And also the calculators that I'm going to be speaking about at the end will also be showing up on the website. So it's a one-stop shop for all sustainability production needs. So I'll encourage you to check it. So we're talking a lot today about a fuel reduction, and I just want to share some tools that you can keep in your toolkit to help you on your production. And the first thing, you know, usually if we have a production that we're going on stage, it's really important to normalize having conversations with your departments and also with your vendors about solutions. So the first thing, you know, you really want to buy out from your electric department, your camera department, with your location department. So if you're filming in a stage, the first important question is to see if the generators in the stage do fulfill all your needs. So all your set needs, all your base camp needs, and also your tech truck needs. And if not, then the conversation can be open to what kind of solutions that we can have to mitigate that gap of electricity need. So is that, for instance, bringing green batteries? Is that to do tie-ins if that's an option there? Is it to bring a transformer, for instance? So we really want to start encouraging all the productions and all the teams and leaders and head of departments to start having these conversations. And I just want to also note that a very key crew member who needs to be involved in these conversations is the power manager or the Jenny operator, who are basically key to seeing how much usage we actually do on day-to-day basis as well. Also, another thing that I wanted to mention is electrical vehicles. It's a really great really great place to use it in productions, and we can specify certain crew or departments that they can utilize it, that they have access to electrical vehicle stations. For instance, your buyers, they're going most of the time from the stage or the office to the mall, where both of these locations have electrical vehicle power banks. So let's try to invest into those kind of solutions and try to pick crew positions where they can be really utilizing these electrical vehicles and reduce of that carbon footprint that we use. Another thing that I want to talk about is when you do your lighting equipment. So when you try to set up for your show and try to figure out what kind of generator you want to have. Small thing that I just realized, personally I realized a few months ago, is that all these generators comes in tiers. And those tiers are specific to how much waste that's been happening, how much fuel is being transferred into power, and how much carbon footprint is being produced. So, and it kind of works, tier 0, 1, 2 are you go from the worst to better, and tier 3 and 4 are actually the best. And a fun fact, in Europe, where they're more advanced in sustainability than us, unfortunately, the minimum requirement is tier 3. So I encourage you to, when you are bringing your generators, to talk to your vendor and see what tier of generator you're using, and see if you can upgrade to a better tier that will help you into reducing your carbon footprint and the waste that you're utilizing as well. Another thing that we should start normalizing, talking about budgeting for sustainability. A lot of things, a really great thing that I started seeing recently is that a lot of the COVID cost has been removed from budgets of productions and now being transferred into sustainability items. So I really encourage you, if you are, head of department of your department, or if you're production manager or producer, to start thinking about that. Start, budgeting for sustainability coordinators, sustainability PAs. Try to figure out green power sources like green batteries. There was a really great invention that was displayed earlier. And normalize having conversation, and also scouts. Just like how we do scouting to go see a location if it works or not, just like how we do tech survey when we do, figure out where camera is gonna be, where production design is gonna be. Let's start normalizing sustainability scouts, where we go and figure out where things gonna be, what's the power, how can we reduce it, what's our footprint, how we're gonna deal with waste management, water solutions. So let's start normalizing these things in our productions. Also, a really great thing that we depend on our friends in location department is wherever we go, we should try to normalize having conversations of tie-ins. A lot of places that we go, a lot of people are nervous to have these conversations, but it's a normal question that can start with a lot of great solutions for it. So let's start thinking about tie-ins, and most likely the cost of having a generator and running it and fuel and picking it up and dropping it off and having security on it is quite more than having a tie-in, which you need maybe a few equipments, an electrician or someone who's certified to do the tie-in, and some government or some permits. So let's start thinking of weighting these options as well. And that's basically what I want to also, which was going to transition me to the Excel sheets that we're going to talk about, the calculators. A lot of times we are scared to do any sustainability items is because we think it's going to cost too much. But that's not necessarily the case. And that's why we're going to start. Now I just want to present some tools that the DGC, the Electric Guilds of Canada, have been promoting, and we're trying to add to the website as well. So this is a great way just to see what's our estimated emission that we're using fuel. And there's just a very few variables that we actually need to input, and the calculation gets calculated by itself. I think this is a pointer, perfect. But you can't see the pointer, so I'll just go close to it, that's okay. So on the top here, you can just put where the yellow boxes are. You can basically put how much you're estimating for fuel per week, and also how many weeks are you filming. And on the second box, and the second two yellow boxes, all you need to do is you put the price for gas and price for diesel and for gas as well. And as you see at the bottom, it just tells you all the calculations by itself. So for this basic exercise, we are basically budgeting to emission 6.72 ton of CO2, basically, which a quick little note at the bottom, it tells you it's about 111 tree seedings grown and sequestering CO2 for 10 years. So just some information that you can arm yourself with when you go and talk to your producer, you talk to other people on how much negative effect we're doing on the climate. The second tab, which is quite interesting as well, it basically gives you a cost analysis between the generators they're using and all the other green initiatives that you can do. So for instance, on the left side, I've put, for instance, the generator rental fee. So it's for this case, it's about $800 per day. And we're estimating a fuel spend of $400 per day, and we're using that for 14 days. So on the right side, we can try to figure out how much is it going to be for a power tie-in, for instance. So we list all the expenses that will deal with tie-ins. So for instance, a grid power tie-in fee, so we're going to get someone to install that. If there is any clean energy rebate, unfortunately in BC they do that more than us, so maybe it's time for us to start policing for that. And the usage fee for electricity, because we're using power from this location, so we're going to pay them for that power to utilize. So in this quick, basically cost analysis, we see that we can basically estimate its saving of $7,700. So that's a really great tool to go to your production manager and say, look, this is how much we can save money-wise, and this is how much we can save from emission, and this is how much we can save from waste of energy and fuel. And we have 3 different sections that we can basically compare it with. So if we want to bring a battery instead, for instance, a mobile battery, what are the costs? We list the costs, and the calculation does itself and will tell us how much of a difference or saving that we're doing. And then the last example is a power drop or infrastructure upgrade, where sometimes we can ask to bring a transformer, which is the most expensive, basically, clean energy. And also with that kind of example, we're still saving about $1,772. So it's just a really great tool to put everything into perspective and not be scared about the cost of sustainability and try to see it really side by side and how that comparison is doing. The last tab, or the last calculator that I want to talk about as well is, so for this one is basically, we're trying to compare generators, and this is a great exercise that I really like. As I said at the beginning, each generator comes with different tiers based on how much waste they're doing or based how much carbon footprint that they're generating. And with this basically example, what we can do is we can pick the size of the generator that we have, which tier it is. So this one, we're choosing the less worse one, which is tier 1, and for how many hours in being used, and how many anticipated load or idling that we're doing. Another fun, not really fun fact, but is that there's a lot of idling that happens when we use generators on set. So we're not actually using the generators at its top capacity. So that's where the power manager can be a really useful ally into this, because when we go and try to ask them, like, we know we have 1200, for instance, amp generator, are we using it to that capacity? And the usual answer is no, we're not. So maybe that's a way that we can downgrade as well and utilize something that's more efficient and more to what our power needs. So in this example, you can take every generator and plug it in at the bottom, and then you see how much is the difference of fuel cost and from emission waste as well that's generated. And you can compare all these different generators when you talk to your vendor if you want to go upgrade one tier. And I encourage you all to have those conversations. And I'll bring it back to Marwa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. All of the information you just saw is also available on dgcgreen.ca, so you can actually go in there and use a summarized version of this calculator to see some of the impact of generator usage, and then you can actually download the tool and plug in the information that you have yourself. I want us to get into some questions. I feel like this could be a question for Marianne. I want to talk about how decision-making can be made on set, how collective decision-making can be made, and how do these practices affect certain roles on a production? What does the impact of those decisions look like?
I think that's a really, perhaps the most important conversation that we need to have, because this, I think it's also a great segue. all of this really excellent tool and this excellent presentation that Mo just made, it relies on inputs from a number of different departments, right? It's not something that a producer or a production manager can do on their own. What we need is a dialogue that involves everyone. I think it's really important that we look at this process. We're trying to make some pretty substantive change in our industry, and in order to do that, we need everyone on board. It's not going to work top-down only or bottom-up only or anything like that. It's going to take absolutely everyone involved. So I really want to encourage, and I don't know where everyone's coming from in terms of your role in the business, but what we need is every voice, because the answers and the solutions they're not going to just come from me or you. They're going to come from somebody in Eddy's department or somebody in Alix's department or them themselves. But we don't know where exactly it's going to come from. We need to start digging into what are the barriers, what are the reasons, frankly, that we keep talking about it and not actually getting very far. What are those actual barriers that are stopping people from making the change that they say they want to make?
Alix or Eddy?
It's funny. Hi, Fast Eddy, Gaffer to the stars. Really happy to be here. This is such an important topic, and I really feel like, as a film technician for 37 plus years, that we have been trying to do this for a long time. Because I can always remember in our low-budget independent startup days, we tried to save every little scrap of everything. I'm sure that I have a piece of black wrap in my kit that I have from 1987. So this whole idea of recycling, it to me is not new. We would always start a show by bringing everything that we had left over from the last show to offer to production, so that would save money and save resources and everything that comes along with it. It seems like this, I'm kind of blanking here. As Marianne just said, it's time for us to kind of put up and not start actually putting. These promises that we've all been making. I think it's so important that little things like this are going to get these conversations going more and more importantly. Alix.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. As what you said, Marianne, like the challenges I think that people have and keep discussing and not getting very far with is that everyone needs such an extensive amount of power, and they want to depend on being able to have the power to light and shoot everything they need to on the set in terms of being prepared. And the fact is, if we keep going to that level, then we're never going to be able to say, bring the power down. And it's hard, even on locations, we can ask, and a lot of people are okay with tie-ins if there's a sufficient amount of power. But then sometimes you do the tie-ins and then it's still not enough power to run the day, and then you have to go also turn on the generator still.
Can I jump on that? I just want to say, I love what you both said, and the word you just used about being prepared. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think it's a really important thing for us to try to dig into and unpack. And it's so interesting what you said, Eddy, because it's funny to think that the idea that sustainability is going to cost more, because weirdly, we're actually trying to be more efficient, right? We're trying to use less. So ultimately, it seems counterintuitive that we think that's more expensive. And I think this funny thing, it's not a funny thing. There's a core value that everybody in our business has. Everybody wants to be prepared. You don't want to ever be that person that shows up and isn't ready for whatever gets thrown at you. You're every department head, every person, that cares about their job cares about being prepared. But it leads to excess. It leads to having more power just in case, more supplies just in case, an extra costume just in case. Like, there's an awful lot of just in case that we do, and it's something that as producers and PMs we've tried to control from a financial standpoint, but we need to be thinking about that from the planet standpoint. It's the very same topic, and it's trying to dig into that value of preparedness versus waste.
I think a lot of people too, in my experience, are basically afraid, or not necessarily afraid, but don't really trust that, let's say, maybe not so much in terms of power, we can get back to that, but I know that, for example, I'm constantly on set looking for the right bin to put the right item in. And I think the fear a lot of the time is that people don't believe that it's actually being separated at the end of the day, that it's just all going into one big truck and just being dumped off into the landfill, and away it goes. And so I think a lot of people are not so into, separating their recyclables or their garbage or their green bin stuff just because of that fact. And so I think once people get more secure in the fact that, hey, this stuff is actually being thought about and being taken care of, that people will be more likely to take part. And I can always remember, and I just said this to the group earlier, that back when I started, we rarely used any kind of generators, be they diesel, be they gasoline, because we've used all kinds in the film industry, because the whole idea was that we were tying into buildings and using shore power, as we call it. And so as projects got bigger, we got more and more projects in the city of Toronto, crews got bigger, budgets got bigger. Well, it just sort of became the norm that just, generators were going to be there and the cables were going to come here. And then the idea of tie-ins kind of went by the wayside as well. The ESA, the Electrical Safety Authority, which we need, they put a real clamp down on it. And I can remember myself doing hundreds of tie-ins in my earlier part of my career. And every single one of them scared me. But at the same time, it really helped us that we didn't have to run cables and run generators. So I think as more buildings become a little bit more open to this, because a lot of the times the building itself is not so keen on, not necessarily just the film crew coming, but to tap into their power is always gives people, makes the hair on the back of their neck stand up a little bit. But it's something that we are totally used to and have done for many, many years. I know that even last year, I think White's had something to do with, and maybe Mike can confirm this, but there are power drops in parks that film units tend to shoot a lot in, so that you don't, when you go to this particular park or this particular area, you don't need to run your generator. You can just tie into the service that the city has provided, and it's ready to go whenever you're there, and with your location manager and your permits. I think we need more facilities like that around the city, and in buildings like this that are set up. This is an atrium. I'm sure there's a power drop right back there. And so that's kind of the first thing that we always look for when we come to locations like this. And for me, the generator is only used when it's needed. And the idea of tiers, I'm sure that it's also a budgetary thing as you go higher up in tiers or lower in tiers or higher. Well, the tier 4 is probably a lot more expensive than the tier 0. And so the one on the set will be the most expensive generator, which will be the quietest, the most efficient. But the one that's way, way back in base camp, running, all the prop trucks and the set deck trucks and everything, those will be a 0 tier and be the cheapest that they can afford. So and every project's different, so you never really know there's never really any kind of standard that you can run off. But I think that DGC tool is really just so great, and I can hardly wait to use it.
I will say, we were told that the tiers doesn't affect the price. It's not. It's an efficiency thing. So you can actually save money with a higher tier because you pay the same price to rent it, but you use less fuel. So
I love that.
So those are the much sought after ones.
This, Eddy, you brought up a point. You said that when you started in the industry, generators weren't the most commonly used thing. But this brings into perspective a question which I think comes up a lot in the sustainability dialogue. What happens as we progress towards no longer using these methods? What happens to the GenOp? What happens to these jobs? How do we, preserve or make these skills used in other ways?
I would like to adapt to this one. I don't if we go green, that doesn't mean anybody's losing their job, because that means their job is very needed, their expertise is very needed, especially when we talk about the Jenny operator. It's just their job has been, it's now different. We're actually asking them as a consultant, we're actually asking about the numbers, we're actually wants their involvement in it. So actually it's a more teamwork actually. We're asking them to be involved more and give us all these solutions. And we should start normalizing having these conversations, just like we're talking about how we're gonna shoot a scene or just how difficult this location is. We should start normalizing having talks about sustainability, about what power we're using. Can we lower that power? Can we bring different power? Can we do green powers?
Yeah, Eddy, can I steal we had a little prep conversation about this, and Eddy threw out an idea that I think we should all, just number one takeaway, which is, we're all used to having respect training at the beginning of a project. That's an absolutely normal thing. For the last few years, we've all had COVID training at the beginning of a new program. We need sustainability training as a mandatory thing at the beginning of every project. And that's where the beginning of the conversation that Mo was talking about can happen. This is the plans for this show, and that's what the thing I'm talking about. And we want and need all of you to be participants and giving us your ideas, giving us your challenges, like all participants.
A lot, and I think this idea that Marianne just proffered is such a great idea. And by the time that maybe one of these can be scheduled in pre-production, you've read the script, you've seen the stages, you've looked at set drawings, you've had all of these kind of conversations already that allows you to make certain calls or decisions about, my case particularly, lights or crew size or generators. And so by the time a meeting like this can be held, real concrete steps can be made, and a plan can be set forth. And I think across all departments would make it even a stronger, better thing, because as I said earlier, the whole garbage recycle thing is a question for people. What to do with extra wood, all those sorts of things in construction, especially. I mean, we all know how. Well, maybe the film industry is somewhat wasteful, a little bit, maybe. I know that, but there's certainly many ways of helping that.
I think just to add to that, it's really for all departments to learn that they need to value sustainability like they value everything else, in their position, in their job. We need to make sure we have this or that to run the day. But what can we do in this scenario or at each of these locations, every department as a whole, to lower our usage and be more sustainable?
Alex, maybe you can elaborate a little bit about what are the barriers that are currently hindering the sustainability process? What do you think the obstacles that currently exist?
I mean, one of the obstacles, if we're talking about the whole power thing, is, say you have creatives and they have their ideas of how they want to shoot and light, and if they're very big and extravagant plans, which is great if you have the budget, but it costs money and it means you need more power, and then that's where we run into the situation of not having enough power through tie-ins to do what they need to do. So I think the biggest thing is that we need all the top creatives to also agree, how can I light the set in this same way but being more sustainable? Like, is there certain lights that give off the same amount that won't draw as much power? It's sort of balancing that.
And I think the technology is going that way as well. There's so much now lights that are LED or less power that utilize all of that. We should encourage those lights and those equipments to be utilized on set as well.
And this would obviously come from heads of departments as well, so they play a big role in kind of making that decision.
Yeah, but Alex makes a good point. We can't just have it be us. We also need the creatives and and those, because that's what I know when I use the word preparedness. Like, that's what's going to terrify your gaffer, your rigging gaffer, your DP. We restrict how much power they have available, and they don't know what's going to get asked of them, right? So we need the buy-in of everyone.
I want to touch on transportation. When we talk about mitigating fuel consumption in transportation, what can we do? That I think this is an area that needs a lot of, many people have questions about how to make changes in this specific area. It's a big component of production, so perhaps someone can shed light on that.
well, I mean, there's a lot of things we can do, obviously. I mean, Mo talked about the EV charging stations, and obviously, you know, there are not enough electric vehicles out there yet, but that's obviously a place we need to go. And what Mo, you know, was saying, I want to agree wholeheartedly with. If we can only get 3 or 4 electric vehicles, or you're concerned that you don't have enough places to charge them, let's be really strategic about who we deploy those with, the people that are driving all day, the people that are using them a lot, not the person that drives to work and parks it all day, the buyers, the drivers that are picking up people and moving them back and forth. Like, that's where we just need to be super strategic about that. Also, I think idling, it's such a, and this leads me to the other tough thing, and this is a Toronto-specific thing, really. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist elsewhere, but I come from Vancouver, and the temperature swings here are a lot more dramatic than where I lived until 10 years ago. And so we have, you know, it's too cold in the winter, and people need their heat on. It's too hot in the summer, we need the AC on, and it's very hard to stop that idling habit. We are used to treating our vehicles as, you know, warm-up tents or cool-down tents, and we need to try to find a way to wean ourselves of that really terrible habit. And then that same thing tips over into, again, transportation department, but generators, what we do with our trailers overnight, right? Running generators all night long, that's something that we need a lot of brains on. I know because there are very few months of the year that someone isn't either worried about the pipes freezing or worried about the makeup melting. Like, it's, you know, it's one or the other, except for a couple of months in spring and fall. And I know that the transportation rental companies are doing a lot to make the vehicles more, you know, better insulated. These are not the same vehicles we used to deal with. So we need to have conversations about that, find out what the real number is, what's the real point at which there's a risk of something melting. And maybe there'll be some in the Q&A about this. There's some other companies using solar panels to actually store energy during the day that ideally could be sufficient for that vehicle to have its heat or AC run in the night. So those are a few.
Great. So we've talked about generators. We've talked about what can be done collectively as a team. I think we should also talk about the available resources. How can someone? I mean, you know, we know that the tool is going to be available for example, DGC members on the website. But what are some of the useful resources and go-to, you know, sites that we can actually use to get information about how to better implement sustainability on set? I think, you know, it's important to have a go-to place. It's important to be able to get information somewhere. So I was hoping you can share some of the things that you do know.
I mean, for me, I start my conversation usually with my vendors. So with my usual vendors, I try to talk to them and ask them about what green solutions they have this year. And each show, I keep asking the same questions again, even if I know the answer. But the repetition, I think, encourages them to actually start going for these sources. And I always encourage other PMs also to do the same thing, because if everybody's asking them the same question, they're going to get fed up by the end of it and actually grab that battery or grab that extra vehicle. And through my vendors, I try to ask and seek new green vendors as well, attending like great panels like today or great resources like today to showcase. I know also Ontario Creates have a list of amazing vendors and amazing resources that can show you or direct you to as well. Those are my go-to usually.
I think this isn't going to be so much an answer to your question, but one thing that was said earlier, I noticed in the CBC presentation earlier, one statement was, let's avoid duplication. There's a lot of us working on assembling this information, or not I say us, but a lot of people there are, you know, and let's try to be additive, not repetitive, because there's a lot of hands, but let's just make sure that we're being additive and not.
Alix and Eddy?
I'd really just add even, you know, ways to progress is like researching, you know, we all know like green bin, recycling, garbage, but even on set having signs and pictures that remind people what goes in each bin it really goes a long way, because some people just get there and go, oh, like, I don't know which one it goes in. But if they can see the visuals, or if you have, I found actually we did this on our production with Marianne, is we made sure the recycling bin for cans only, like, just had the hole. So you're really getting your recycling and everything organized, so when the garbage picked up, it can then go be sorted in the appropriate manner.
Yeah, I feel strongly about that. Like the more we can, signage, infographics, communication, that cool Oscar that we saw earlier.
Oscar.
Yeah, yeah. But we can make signs until we have Oscar. And even the city of Toronto offers, you can get infographics from them free that you can print out and stick on your garbage cans and recycling bins.
In regards to the question, Marwa, I don't really have a go-to necessarily. With me and the crew that I've worked with for many years, we just we try and recycle whatever we can. In terms of any of the gels or gear or cables or wiring or anything like that we've used, or LED often comes in strips. It's very reusable, and all the power sources for it. So we have drawers of this stuff in our trailers, and we rely on production to help us. If a lot of these guys are, getting their hands dirty and carrying cables and stuff, not necessarily on computers doing research. So a lot of the times we would, look for support and help from the locations department and production and the PMs and any advice they might have or suggestions, but not necessarily any particular go-to website or anything like that. Although DGC, the green screen, is always there as a backup.
Thank you very much. I think we've got time to start with the Q&A. We can.
Just grabbing the old mic here. Pretend I'm not here.
So I think we can open the floor up for any questions. And you someone else.
Hello. Is it on? I converted CBC to LED lighting over a decade ago. National went from 1,700 amps to 100 amps. 450 tons of greenhouse gases were saved every year. Just a note, you know why that was? It wasn't because of green. The green that they were saving was the green that went into their wallet, right? ROI was, worst case scenario, 2 years. Some places 6 months. So the bottom line is, even things like the salty dog over there, right? Guess what, Eddy? You don't need a ESA permit for it. So now that's a savings. Less cabling, all this sort of stuff. So the reality is, yeah, and I converted like our HMIs, 1.2Ks and 2.5Ks to LEDs. It goes up to a certain point. I know the restrictions, Eddy. I know there's certain things that you can't do, but the bottom line is, in certain applications, it is applicable. Right? You've just got to turn and sit back and say, here's where the savings is. So it's all about the green, but the green is the one that goes into your wallet. So if you follow that mantra, PMs are happy.
Absolutely. I mean, we were part of a crew that were the first ones to switch from tungsten space lighting to create ambience to LED panels to create ambience. And initially, it was a bit of a battle with production because of the cost of these things, but a simple Excel spreadsheet really helped to prove that, the saving in man hours, light bulbs, air conditioning expenses, hydro expenses, all of those kinds of little things that, maybe production doesn't necessarily think about, really meant a lot in the end. And now it seems to be the go-to, where these older versions of space lights are kind of collecting dust in everybody's warehouses. These LEDs are now the go-to to create this kind of ambience. And that is just one small step. There will always be the need for an 18K that requires the use of a generator or a big power source to power it. There's not always the need for a 2K blonde. So every tool, every light is a tool that you can have But the idea that LED is going to be the one go-to, I think is sort of a mistake because a big 10K Fresnel will always look much prettier than a flat LED panel. And so, I mean, some of us, or some people just want to have that more discerning kind of eye or discerning kind of look. As I say, every light, every LED, it's all a tool that you have, but ultimately it does go back to the dollar.
But I think the point is well taken that to think that it's more expensive is a fallacy. It's an excuse because there are lots and lots of ways that it's less expensive and it's just different. We spend the money differently.
Okay. I was like, do I need to press a button? I have one kind of observation. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on. Marianne, you were mentioning the idling, with the heat and what have you, and I'm wondering if also one of the inputs, and I'm sure there's people who are tired of me talking about this, but is that the impacts of climate are going to impact productions, right? So that idling for heat's only going to become more necessary. And so perhaps the argument is switch over on a cost-effective basis because you're going to be idling a heck of a lot more, and the speed with which you switch over technology may actually mitigate those future costs. And if we can kind of look at production, and I know it's sort of each production is a fixed period, but there's, each production company is looking at multiple productions over time. So it's something to sort of think about maybe in terms of trying to propel and create that urgency. My second comment was, you're talking about tools to reduce fuel. And a lot of productions use financing for productions. And I was wondering if any of you have thought of, or anyone's considered, any of the sort of, in the financial space of sustainability in relation to those kinds of loans and what happens in a production. I'm not as familiar with it, only to know that it's sort of how these productions sometimes are structured, but perhaps there's an opportunity there that, we're not necessarily have on our radar yet, but could think about.
So are you referring to the choice of lender? Is that
Well, just if through the lender, if you are doing something sustainably, or maybe there's ways of getting some kind of, in other industries, they have sustainability-linked loans. And if you perform in a certain way with your, whatever it is your loan's going towards, it's not that significant, but it's a bit of a cut on your, or you avoid a penalty, or you may get some kind of financial benefit from it.
It's an interesting idea to unpack. I do think, even something, because yes, so typically your big studio productions, they're not interim financing, but most Canadian production and independent production, yes, you use a lot of interim financing. I noted with interest the whole thing with TIFF recently and Royal Bank, right? So it does get you thinking, what are your choices of vendors and what are choices of in all areas, and how that impacts what your sustainable footprint is. But I get what you're saying as well is, maybe there's more to unpack.
I just want to add that I know that broadcasters like, for instance, CBC and Crave, as examples, now they want to see sustainability lines in the budgets, and they do have set money aside to tap into those budgets as well. So I've seen a lot of now budgets that have these items, and they're requesting those as well to be put it in the budget. So I guess that's a really good step forward.
Yes, hi, my name's Astra, and I had a question about, David Miller was here this morning and talking about net zero. And wouldn't that make sense if the film industry would get into net zero policy and just say, let's become net zero in such and such a year, and let's create all our policy, because we talk a lot, but the solutions don't happen because we don't have any deadlines. And I think if we became a little bit more kind of drastic in what our outcome would be, that maybe we get results with, even with telefilm, only Rolling Green has an accreditation system, and I said, well, why can't the practice be across the country? So we should just start moving in a more proactive way with a real goal in the end.
Well, that's exactly why we need to be measuring, right? Like, that's the only way that we can actually truly, achieve that. a lot of the studios do have net zero goals, right? Like, most of the U.S. studios do. How they're doing and achieving them, but they do. I believe that some of our Canadian broadcasters do as well. The tricky thing is, as an industry, right? It's not like we need it to be an organization kind of based, because that's where the data gets tracked. And if offsets have to be paid, they have to come out of a budget somewhere. But absolutely, it should be a goal, and it is for many studios currently. I agree with you though, Astra. And that's what every person here is here because they care. You wouldn't have shown up today if you didn't. And it's, we need to do, not just talk. We need to do, and having goals ensures that you do.
Just to add to that, so the city of Toronto, their goal is by 2040 to have net zero, and that was sort of part of their strategy of getting there. Will have an impact on the film industry and everyone who's filming in Toronto, so it will sort of force it in that direction. And that's also why they've taken the steps, as Eddy mentioned earlier, to put tie-ins for productions. One of them is at Ashbridges Bay. That's the current one that's working and has enough power, and they're still working on the other one, but ideally there's more of those to come in the future, and that will really help the film industry a lot too.
We have time for one more question.
Obviously, we want everyone to be super involved in sustainability on set, but in terms of the future of it on a practical standpoint in accountability and who is sort of going to be a driving leader on set, do you think it will really evolve into being something that individual departments take on, or do you think a sustainability coordinator will become like a permanent fixture on film sets?
So I'm going to say, I've been fortunate enough that the budgets of the last few things I've done, well, except for Alix and I's last project, but that we've had enough resources to have a sustainability coordinator, and it's an excellent position. We've even had a PA as well working with them so that we could actually truly do something. And yeah, there does need to be a certain leadership. The things we're talking about in terms of tracking, whose job is that, right? We can't just sort of start throwing it on top of people. In fact, that is what will make people hate sustainability, is if we say, you just have to do more, we're not giving you any help. So we do need to look at staffing appropriately for it. But I really want to underline when I say, we need everybody, I'm not just saying it as the thing is that we're talking, and I've really given this a lot of thought, I'm going to say it again, that we're talking about needing substantive change. And change is scary. People don't just, every type of change in your life, you're not sure what you're going to give up, what you're going to lose by making a change. So that's, to change this great big ship that we're on, it really somehow, we got to get all those people who are scared of change to at least come and join the party and be part of the conversation. It can't just be us.
Mo, Marianne, Alix, and Eddy, thank you so much for your time.
I think that's such an important thing. Thank you so much, Marwa. Just the idea of this coordinator would be so wonderful as a guy who spent 37 years on set. To have that kind of somebody watching our back. I mean, during COVID, with the COVID teams, it was also so wonderful, because I'm not thinking about COVID when we're blocking a scene or looking at a shot and trying to figure out the lighting, but to have somebody behind me saying, hey, take a step back, oh, okay, sure, but the same thing with a coordinator of any kind of recyclables or sustainability, because again, we're not thinking about that all the time, but to have somebody there watching our back and reminding us and helping us, that would be really great.
Thank you, Eddy.
My name is Mike Harwood. I'm the work for William F. White. We're the people who rent the big white trucks with the dirty generators in them. Back to the generator operator. We do a 2-day course, and I'm an instructor on that course. We talk about alternative energy. We talk about transformers in glass factories, warehouses where we are. We talk about electrical calculations for these units are in kilowatt hours, where a transformer, a generator is an amp. So we do that training so our Jenny Ops or more power managers, as you mentioned. So the training is there. Anybody has people who want more training, let us know. But yeah, it's a never-ending evolving. And as far as the tier generators, we're down to, I think, if you find some tier 2s in our inventory, it's something that's being phased out. It's a slow process. In California, they're getting to the point, by the time they get tier 4 generators in, the tier 5s are starting to come out. So it's a never-ending chase, but it's happening, it's slow. But again, to think that Jenny Ops are going to be put out, other training, kilowatt hours, alternative energy, existing transformers in buildings, the existing power drops. The second one's going to be installed at Sunnyside Park very shortly. So that gives us 2 400 amp 3-phase systems. That's equivalent of a 1200 amp generator. Sit in one of our parks. Now 2 in the next few months, ready to go. Okay?
I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. I really appreciate it.